Hello crafty friends, it's Tina the Scrappin Rabbit here for Scrappy Tales Crafts. And in this video we're going to be creating some cards using these Scrappy Tales dies and stamps. This die set is called the Outlined Rose Assortment. It's a 2-layered metal die set with a ton of dies. And the sentiments that I'm going to be using is from the Fairy Sentiments stamp set. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using some glittered cardstock from my stash to cut out the outline part of the die. So the outline parts are the ones that are intricate, and you can see all of the designs there. I chose these 4 to cut out, and I couldn't make up my mind what color to do, so I went ahead and cut them out in multicolors. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to be creating at this point, but I did love all the colors that I picked. Now I'm going to grab some green cardstock to cut out the leaves, and so I'm going to cut out a bunch of leaves. There are 2 different dies, a large die and a small die, and so I went ahead and I just cut out a bunch. I'm going to use my Copic markers to color the YG67, the YG63, and the YG03. And I'm just going to add a little bit of shading with these Copics. Now, even though it's cardstock, colored cardstock, they still will blend just a little bit, and I really like the way that it looks to add just a little bit of dimension. And it's a lot less work starting with a colored cardstock than going from scratch and using all white cardstock. So this is a quick way to add a little bit of dimension and shading without having to color every detail onto white cardstock. So I grabbed a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm going to grab the dies that cut the background of the roses out with some Distress Oxide inks. I'm using the Squeezed Lemonade and the Fossilized Amber for the yellows, and this is just a really quick way to ink up the background before you cut it and actually have it all on one sheet of cardstock. So I'm adding the yellow, and then I'm just dabbing in with the darker color, and as you can see, it comes together really quickly, and I don't have to deal with any small die cut pieces. I'm using this strip of cardstock, which is a lot more easy to maneuver. And just by brushing on the lightest color and dabbing on the darkest color and then holding the outline of the rose over it, I can get an idea of what it's going to look like, and then I can cut it out, and there I have my colored background pieces. So I'm just going to glue the outlines of the rose that I cut out with the glittered cardstock. This is gold cardstock that I used for the yellow roses, and I think it looks so pretty. And then now I'm just going to glue it on top of those background pieces. I love the way that it looks because it's lighter around the edges and it's darker in the center, just how a real rose looks. And this liquid glue works pretty well. It's got that fine tip. This is the Barely Art glue, and you just push it down, and then you have your little die cuts ready to go. So I chose these 3 flowers for the yellow, and I did go ahead and cut out several colors as I showed you, but look at how pretty that looks with the leaves. So I'm going to do the same thing in the pinks, and this time I'm using the Worn Lipstick and the Spun Sugar. I think I need to get a re-inker for my Spun Sugar. It did feel like it took a lot of work to get some color onto that cardstock, where my Worn Lipstick was much juicier, so I think I'm gonna have to start investing into some re-inkers here. But look at how pretty that looks, and you just dab it on there, blend it out until you like the way that it looks underneath. And it's so much quicker than actually coloring them using Copics, although that would be really pretty as well. So a quick way to get together all these little die cuts. And as you can see, I did 4 of the pink. I found myself losing pieces along the way. I'm sure I'll find them all and have to do a card with multicolored roses eventually. But this is what they look like, and this time I left the die cuts in place, and I found that that was easier for me to glue without getting my fingers all sticky. And I just used my tweezers. I don't know why I forget to use my tweezers sometimes, but they are one of my favorite tools. You can hold on to your tiny die cut with the tweezers, add the glue, and then your fingers don't even touch the glue. And then just centering it on that die cut and then popping it through, and you're done. And that came together even quicker, and then my fingers got less sticky. So when you mass produce cards, you kind of learn a trick or two along the way, and that was something that I figured out with this second go round. So for the purple combinations, I'm using the shaded lilac and the wilted violet. I love this combination. Now purple is one of my favorite colors, so this actually ended up being my favorite card, the purple one. I'm curious to see if you guys end up with a favorite. So this is the same deal, the lighter, and then the basically just dabbing on the darker for the center. And so you end up with the blobs, the 4 blobs, and then you just place your the cover die that does the outside, the background, over those blobs and run it through your die cut machine, and then glue those outline dies on top, and they just look so beautiful. I love the way that the glittered cardstock looks too, because it does give it that extra sparkle and you don't have to do anything else. The rose is just completely done. It has that sparkle, the multicolors in there, blended in a fade, and I just think that it looks so pretty. So those are the purple flowers that I ended up doing, and again, I think that these roses were my favorite. So all the roses here, I ended up doing a red blend using the red fired brick and the candied apple, and look at how pretty they turned out. So those are all my roses, and now it's time to design the actual card. I reached for the salvaged patina distress oxide ink, and I just started inking away. I love this color, and it just screams spring to me, and that's what I was thinking of as I started designing my cards. And as I was blending the color onto this panel of Bristol Smooth cardstock, I decided I wanted to go darkest to light, so have it kind of fading from the top to the bottom. And so I was just adding several layers of the salvaged patina to try to get it to go a little bit darker. And I knew I was going to use a stencil, so I picked a stencil from my stash, and then I grabbed a blending brush. I like using the brushes when I use a stencil better than the actual blending tool, but if I'm just blending on the cardstock, I prefer the blending tool. I'm adding a layer of the salvaged patina going around the edges, leaving the center blank because I want to put my roses in the center of the cardstock, so it doesn't matter if there is any color in the center. So I'm just adding some layers, and I'm peeking through just to see how it's coming along, and I decide I want to add extra color across the top so that I have that dark to light fade out towards the bottom. And then once I feel like I have enough ink on there, then I'm good to go. And I actually can only add a little bit more ink towards the top. If you wait for it to dry and then add another layer, you can get it to go a little bit deeper. For this second card, I'm going to use some of this texture paste with the same stencil. So I'm going to tape down my white panel, and then I'll just use the magnets for the stencil, and I'm just going to use my little spatula and spread some of that paste across the top. I'm just playing around at this point. I don't even have any idea what the end look is going to be like. And so sometimes I know exactly what I'm going to make, and some days are like this where I have no clue what the end product is going to be. So I added some paste, took a peek, decided I needed just a little bit more in that upper left-hand corner, and then again towards the bottom, spreading it out onto there to that little layer. And then I'll have my card layer done. And I love the white on white. I've always loved the way that that looks. So I'm setting that aside to dry. Thinking about my sentiment, I'm grabbing that Fairy Sentiments set, and I'm gonna do happy birthday because I always need happy birthday cards. And I'm also gonna grab a thank you because you can never have enough thank you cards. And I'm just spacing it around because I'm thinking I'm gonna do 2 birthdays or 2 thank yous, and I think I end up doing 3 birthdays and 1 thank you. I'm prepping that cardstock with this anti-static powder tool, grabbing my Versamark ink and stamping those sentiments. Giving it a double stamp just to make sure I have good coverage, and then I'm sliding that stamp down so I can get another happy birthday, and then I'm going to slide it down yet one more time so I have 3 happy birthday cards and 1 thank you from this batch. So I'm going to use some of this white embossing powder. This is the Ink on 3, and it's super fine, and I love the way that it does how it looks with embossed sentiments. Just making sure I got some good coverage there, heating up my heat tool nice and hot, and then melting down that powder, and I love the way an embossed sentiment looks. So once it cools down, I'm just going to brush off that anti-static powder tool. I find that this powder does not wipe off as well as some of my other anti-static powder. So grabbing some scissors, cutting these down into strips, then I'll add the little flag banners to them. Now it's time to put together my cards. I've got these top folding A2 size card bases, and my texture paste is nice and dry, so I'm going to go ahead and glue those onto the tops of my card bases. But now I'm gluing the inked background on, but then I thought, you know what, it needs something. Let me add some splatter. So I grabbed my splatter box and added some glimmer mist splatter onto there, and I love the way that that looks. It gives it a little something extra, keep it a little bit more interesting, and of course you got to have more sparkle. And I think it just looks so pretty. So now I'm just cutting down some of these leaves, arranging the roses onto my card, trying to figure out the design of my actual card. Once I have it figured out, I'm gluing the bottom pieces down, and I'm just kind of building up the design. So adding the leaves, then the next layer of flowers, and then the next layer of leaves, and just kind of going again, thinking ahead to what is in the background and what is going to be popped up on top. So I'm just adding some random stems there, gluing them down, and I did cut lots of leaves, so I'm able to cut some of them apart. And I'm going to pop up the last rows and the last 2 roses, and also my sentiment banner, and the yellow one is going to be my thank you card, and the rest will be my birthday cards. And then that one looks like it can use another leaf, so I'm just going to tuck an extra leaf in there. And next up is going to be to add some bling, and I have this opalescent type of bling in like 3 or 4 different sizes, and I think that it looks so pretty. Some of them are so tiny that I need to use my little picker tool that I keep forgetting that I have to help me get it on there, and just adding it around the roses for that finishing touch. And once I have the final bling on there, that completes these 2 cards. I didn't feel like the texture paste cards needed the bling, but I loved the way that the bling looked on these 2. So that completes those 2 cards. Here are the first 2 that I completed. Do you have a favorite? I love the purple. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you like my cards. I hope you like my videos, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye for now.